Hello everyone, and welcome. We're just going to take a minute here as we warm up to let everyone come into the room as it's filling. I want to welcome you all here today. I will do that again in a minute. Um, if you would like to say hi, we'd love to know who's here. We've got a big group of people coming in. Where are you dialing in from today? Megan and I are here in lovely sunny Philadelphia. Where are you guys today? Oh, yeah. Hi, Anne. A local. Yay. Indiana. I have driven through Indiana many times when my son was living in Chicago. Oh, California, Cincinnati. Up, we got a Chicago. Florida,
Quebec.
all over the place. I love to have people coming in from all different places. Okay. Well, I think we've got the group slowing down a little bit. I'm sure more people will be jumping in as we go. Um, So, welcome everyone. I am Beth Brodowski, and I'm the president of Iris Creative for anybody that this is your first time here. And today I have on with us Megan Riley, our art director. Megan, you actually, at the moment, we both say Beth Brodowski. That's one
Oh,
thing that we missed.
I
So, I'll have her change her name so that you know where to find her.
yes.
Um, we are thrilled to be doing this session today. We love doing these community webinar sessions on topics that are really interesting to us. And as we are getting ready for our branding conference in the fall this year, we're kind of examining the different things that we're doing, the different things that we're working on, and seeing the questions that are coming up to us. And more and more, like we're doing lots and lots and lots of style guides. So I want to ask you all a question to start. How many of you guys like? Do you have a style guide? So like a Y or an N or a yes or a no. I'm just curious who that's here today actually like has a written down style guide. Yeah, I love it. Kind of, right? Okay, so you guys that are saying kind of are don't feel bad. Lots of people are in that situation. And it's sort of like what does a style guide even mean? A lot of times someone will ask you for a style guide and it's sort of like, well, I don't know, like what's it supposed to have? And then you go out and you do a Google search and as I'm sure you've probably seen, it's the Wild West. Like they're all different, right? And this is interesting. Anna's saying that yes, but ours often conflicts with social media best practices. That's a really great point. I think we should, we can get into that if we have extra time today. Um, okay, so for those of you that do have style guides, what are you using it for? And for those of you that don't have style guides, where is it tripping you up? Like, why did you come today? Like, what is it about a style guide that makes you think that like this might be helpful for our organization if we had it? Right. And as you're putting in any thoughts of that into the chat, I also want to start off today by inviting you to comment on everything. So Megan is going to be showing you, she's going to be driving in a little bit and showing you a bunch of different style guide examples. But you're all people that need them and use them and sort of have them. If you have any best practices, if you have any ideas, if there's things in your style guide that really have you've shown that have helped you that we don't mention, please throw your ideas and suggestions into the chat so that it's in the pool of information for all of us to learn from. Megan and I are here as like people that have done this, but you guys are also here as people who have done this or need this or are thinking about it. And so anything that you want to contribute, even if, and I say this all the time, even if you contradict what we say, and we say, oh, you have to have this in there, you can say, nope, didn't put ours in, don't need it. That's okay. Like, we don't mind being contradictive. We want all of our ideas to come into the pile to be helpful. And you guys are great with your ideas here. So I'm just going to scroll back. So for
Yes,
consistency,
consistency seems to be a huge one in
hmm
there.
right, what else do we have,
Um,
Megan?
and sending it out to vendors and freelancers and other people that they're working with. Um, website, like web developers, sharing it with staff so that internal teams can keep things on brand. And then also, this one was interesting from Anne. They're a national nonprofit. So theirs is used for trademark and logo consistency and program and model language across the
Ah,
network of locations, which is definitely something that some organizations have to face. So,
fantastic. And
yeah.
that's a really important point, actually, Anne. We're actually thinking about putting a session into conference this year, either with regional chapters or with nationals or maybe a mix of both to really talk about that complexity of when there's a national brand and local people that are utilizing it. Like, where does the tension show up? Where do the opportunities show up? I think it's such an interesting conversation. And like, where do you create guidelines and where do you allow them to flex, right? It's such an interesting thing. And so the thing that we're going to start off with before Megan jumps in and shows you anything is just a good reminder for all of us is that all organizations are unique, and what is a perfect style guide for one of you may be completely inadequate for somebody else. And so we're going to show you a variety of different things that people put into style guides for different reasons, and sort of some of the things that are evolving that we're seeing in like our most current one that we just finished. And another thing that's important to remember, a lot of you guys are saying here that you kind of have them or that you sort of have them or that they don't like it doesn't cover what you're doing today or conflicting with current guidelines for social media. This is one of the things that we see, that you do a rebrand, you get your style guide, and then it becomes like, a Bible or like the permanent source of truth. And then a year goes by and you get a new graphic designer or a new person takes over the marketing department and they say, I hate orange. And all of a sudden your design starts changing at like this micro level, but it never gets rolled back up into standards or things like you're saying that social media standards or accessibility we're going to be talking about today. Things start changing in the needs of marketing, in the general ecosystem of marketing, and we don't ever go back and update things that we've changed. And so it's a pain, it's difficult, but having that documentation, having that clarity, like we created it for a purpose, and to keep it up to date is really, really important. So it is important that you have a style guide in a format that you can evolve and keep up to date. As a creative firm, like we don't always give out the file if we do, an annual report because, no one's going to need that same annual report designed exactly that way next year. But your style guides, like that is a template or a tool that you need to have access to, and you need to be able to change it and update it. So it's also important that you think about what should that tool be created in? Should it be in one of the online products like Brandfolder? Should it be in Canva? Should it be an InDesign document? Should it be in Word? There's lots of different ways that you can create them. The ones that we're going to show you today happen to be created in InDesign, but the results of it don't matter as much. Everyone that we created them for had access to InDesign, and so it was easy to be able to keep it there. But think about that. What do you need to have your tools created in so that they're going to be accessible so that you can keep them up to date and you don't have to constantly be going back and, making it a project again? So what we're going to do today is we have, I don't know, 5, 6, a bunch of different sets of style guides. Megan has them all lined up as tabs in as PDFs so that we can take a look at them. And we're going to start at the most basic level and then grow out from there. As Megan's going through them, I'm going to keep an eye on the chat. And I'm so excited, you guys. I don't know if you know about this. You can make the font bigger in Zoom chat. It's for anybody over 40. Trust me, it's a game changer. And so I've got all of your chats up here. I'm going to be keeping an eye on it. So if you have questions, if you have comments, if you have thoughts, if there's things that we go too fast on and you want us to go back to, let us know because we want to make sure that you're getting what you need to get out of it. And so as Megan switches over from our title slide over into this, let me ask one more question. Like, why did you come today? What are you looking to learn about style guides that could be most helpful? Like if you walked away with one thing that would be the most helpful thing you could get out of this conversation, what's that thing that you're looking for? Okay, so Connie says how to share and get people new to a style guide to understand and follow them. Okay, write a template to create a style guide, yeah. Looking for tools we can use to create it in for ease of use, yeah, that's great. A template, okay, yeah. Okay, making sure we don't want to miss a key element. Uniformity, these are great things. Best practices for creating a living guide. How to keep it updated. Perfect, yeah. How to ensure the document is provided by our consultant that is actually usable by staff. That is a great question, absolutely. Okay, So please feel free to put more things in. I'll keep an eye on them. So interesting, like, so this is one we did a couple of years ago, and it's an InDesign document, and it's really vertical. Megan's going to show you one later that's actually horizontal, because look at, like, in the current times, a vertical page based document, is can be more challenging to use. So
Mhm.
Megan, why don't you talk a little bit about this client and what we did in the project, and what we put into the guide.
Okay, so this is a behavioral health organization called New England Village. And as part of the project, we did a full brand strategy project where we were initially deciding whether or not they needed to change their name. We did a whole research project around that. And then they decided to keep their name, but we needed to change their imagery. So we evolved their imagery, we created a new logo, and then we developed a website for them as well as just a whole brand. So including some language and including their colors, their logo, their fonts, all of that. So as we go into it, we always include a table of contents just to make the manual easier to use and a how to use this manual. I'm not going to get into this too in depth, but something that's important to note about this organization specifically is that this organization had a marketing team of one, and it also had one specific outside vendor that they worked with for their design work. And so it was a very small team that was going to be using this guide. And so certain things that might be in other guides did not need to be included in this guide because there was some institutional knowledge that was there between those two vendors. But what was important to note was that the marketing team of one that was there was planning on retiring in a few years. And so in developing this new brand, it also needed to be a brand that was going to be easily transferred over to a new team. When that time came, that time has come, and they've done a very good job at continuing with the brand that we've established. So from there, we have some of the language that we discussed that I mentioned. So we did some core values and some mission statement work with them. So that is all in the guide. And then we go right into the logo work. So their logo specifically, we developed a tagline for them. And so there were two different versions of the logo, with the tagline and without, but they also had a vertical and horizontal version of the logo. So we wanted to present that. So we are showcasing the logo variations, and then we go into Pantone color. And so Pantone was an interesting thing with them because
Great.
um, we actually added in this page after we sent over I think we added this in, Beth, and you can remind me. I think we had to add this in later because the team decided they needed to print some things using Pantone colors, and they accidentally used the wrong logo on the wrong materials. So they were getting something printed. I believe it was going to be was it four color process?
Yeah, so what happened was is we finished this logo, and a lot of times when you do a new brand launch, you want to have, swag printed out. And so they picked out a few different pieces of swag from a swag company, and they sent us over the examples, and they were like, we need to know what logo we should print on them. And we told them, because one of the other things that we do is we usually create a spreadsheet that lists out, like, here's the file name, and here's the color format that it's in, and here's the use of it, because it's when you're not the person that created the brand, it can be so confusing. This example has a couple of logos, but we're going to show you ones that have significantly more logo files that actually exist, and you'll see what we mean when, like, there's a lot of files that, even if it seems like it's only one logo, even here we've got with the tagline, without the tagline, vertical, horizontal.
Yeah.
But in this case, the specific colors that we picked looked completely different in CMYK colors versus Pantone colors. Now, I don't know if you guys are looking and counting, but there are 5 colors in this logo. So the dark blue that's in the graphic of the logo is the same dark blue that's in the typography. There's no such thing. I mean, yes, there's a 5 color press, but printing 5 Pantone colors on a 5 color press is probably like one of the most expensive ways you could ever print. And we heavily advised them that they would not need this, and they shouldn't really do it that way. And if they were printing it in full color, they should stick with They should stick with PMS. But, this is the thing. Every client is different. Everyone has their unique needs and they wanted it. And so what happened was is we made this logo for them because the product that they were printing on said that it needed to be in Pantone colors. And then without telling the design department, the procurement people ordered a different product that product needed a CMYK logo. And then the logo was printed on these launch pieces and it looked completely dull. And so it's like having clarity around not just the structure and the style of the files, but like the color format of them so that people understand what they should be used for is really important.
Yes. And so then we created some guidelines around so they had very specific rules around their white version of their logo and when they wanted it to be used. They did not want that to be used as often. And
Right.
so we had to create some guidelines around how and when the white logo is used. We always include the minimum space around a logo. And that is so that people are following some guidelines around how tight um, elements can get to the logo to leave some breathing room.
And for those of you that are saying like how do we get people to like follow our rules? The intention of this page is to give them some guidance, but like we are with you. Like one of the things that we struggle with is the most is you can put this page in every single guideline book that you have, and people will do everything that they can to cram as many words into a design as possible. I don't know, is it just us? I'm sure that happens to you guys too. And what they do to fit more words on and to try not to make the type too small is they start stealing from white space. They start stealing from the margins. They start stealing and crowding in everything. So we have these guidelines. If nothing else, the goal of it is to, if you have any chance in your organization to have the creative team or the people responsible for marketing have like a viewing party to like check over things. If you have any sort of blessing arrangement, being able to say, hey, the guidelines say you need to have more space, so you're going to have to cut some words or you're going to have to do something. In theory, at least it's documented, but this I can tell you out of all the things, space keeping enough space around the logo makes such a huge difference in giving your brand visual impact. I mean, think of the Apple logo that's by itself on a page with nothing around it compared to the Microsoft logo on a box. There's an old YouTube video called Microsoft Designs the iPod box, where they just keep putting all this like qualifications and stuff and partner logos and just filling up every inch of space. It would be really helpful if people listen, but this is a battle that you're probably going to have to fight over and over again.
And there are some times where even like the minimum size that we have here can't be followed. Like for example, an avatar logo that gets really small on social media. Obviously, you have no control over that, and sometimes the logo is going to be smaller. So it's evaluating, okay, I think in their case, what they ended up doing for social media was they removed their name from their social media avatar and just have the icon. And that way it's still visible and readable because the words aren't readable. And so by having that little blurry line underneath, it was removing some of the impact of the logo. And so there's some decisions that you just have to make internally and some decisions that then you can document in the brand guide over time as
And
you've made those
I
decisions.
think that the comment that Denise just made is really important. And in fact, it might be something that we need to think about because we have listed in here minimum size. And she says that staff are using the minimum size on a banner and it's too small. And so you're right. Like, even with these guidelines, minimum size is sort of relative. Like, we put a minimum size in for things like a business card. Like, this is
Mhm.
the smallest we want you to make it. And you also hope that people have judgment in between. But a lot of times today, you've got non-designers creating design projects. I often joke that when I started in my first in the nonprofit that I worked for, my title was so specific, it was technical illustrator, and I had to get a promotion to graphic designer and another promotion to art director, and the whole time marketing was a separate department. Like, anybody live in that world anymore? We don't. And so kind of this is great to do this as much for us because we're learning what are the problems you guys are running into that we need to start maybe considering adding into, even if it's just in language, like consider the size of the output.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, Megan, we should probably force me to stop talking and keep going.
No, no, this is good information. And we can skip past some of this stuff in future ones. So then we have a logo violations page. This is just explaining to the masses who may receive your logo what they can and can't do, because everybody likes to make their own little changes to their logos, like changing the font. Sometimes we've had all kinds of clients that have come to us when they were doing a rebranding and they've said, we have such a problem with our logo. It's out there. There are multiple different colors of our logo out there. There are multiple different elements that have been added to our logo. We need to kind of like get this under control. And so that's what this logo violations page is for. It's to remind people what you should and shouldn't be doing when you have the logo. Um, Brand colors. So again, this sometimes includes that PMS color that we were talking about, but oftentimes a lot of our clients recently, interestingly, have not been using that because PMS printing has been happening so much less frequently. And then another thing that you should consider, and this is something that we like to talk about when talking about a brand refresh, is a secondary color palette. And so some organizations need a secondary color palette in their initial brand. But when your organization has an established brand but needs a bit of a refresh, whether it's you're thinking about making some changes because things aren't working for social media, or you're thinking about making some changes because things aren't working, just the brand is old and you need to kind of freshen it up, but you don't want to change your logo. One of the places that a lot of organizations we recommend kind of starting to create that new refreshed feeling is in a secondary color palette so that you can pull in some new colors. Or, for example, as Beth mentioned earlier, if you have a new graphic designer who's kind of started adding, like evolving the brand a little bit over time, that's where you might want to be documenting some new colors that your brand is using.
Yeah. I think Sarah's point is really interesting too, that she had people use AI on an image and it messed up their logo font, which of course it did because
Yes.
AI is notoriously bad at fonts. But where you're right, we're now in this world where people are putting things into AI, which, definitely we haven't actually put that into style guides yet. Maybe we all need to start adding in a page of what you are and are not allowed to do in AI with any part of a brand. Like, are you going to allow AI created images in your brand? Like, that would be a really good thing to start considering as as part of your brand guidelines.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a great thing to consider. Brand fonts. So your organizational fonts we have documented, and then we always have an application page. Now, this was the document, the living document that we shared with them to then update as time went. So we don't have the updated version of the document, but those are some things that we include in a guideline.
Right. And sometimes, like, we have brand fonts here, and like you'll see one later where, like, not this, as you can see, it has two very specific fonts. The only people that use this brand are people that have access to this font. If you're going to have a more distributed brand, you're going to need like a Microsoft font, like something that's accessible. Like, so you need to make that decision. Like, are people using Times Roman? Are they using Arial? Are they using Aptos? Like, what do you want them to do if they don't have access to your, perfect brand ecosystem? So, and a lot of what we're doing now is also, when we're creating these and even creating the brand, we're going over to Canva and checking about what fonts are available there to make sure that we're choosing, in an ideal world, choosing at least some aspects of a brand font that are available and accessible there. Because more and more, once we get down into the applications and the templates for brands, we often end up building out a set in InDesign, and then a whole nother set in Canva so that more people can have access to them.
And sometimes we're not even creating a set in InDesign. Sometimes
Yeah,
we're
that's
only
true.
creating them
Sometimes
in Canva.
sometimes that's getting dropped entirely.
Yep.
All right, so okay, so before we jump into photography, Gwen is asking, what do we say to an organization that has expanded its secondary palette colors in their work with other designers and interns who are studying design? What's too many colors, and how might we pull back and realign? Okay, so that is one of the things that happens when you have designers and interns, and especially like students. I mean, Megan and I both went to art school. There's nothing that a student wants to do more than to do something new and unique and distinctive so that they can
Absolutely.
put their new skills to test. And so reining them in is really, really important. But you might have secondary brands. You might say, well, for our events, we're allowed to do something fun. Like once we were working with a hospital system whose colors were purple and gray and we were doing a breast cancer event. And we tried to like the rules, we followed the rules and stayed within the brand. But can I tell you how depressing a dark purple and gray design looks for breast cancer? It looks
Doesn't work.
depressing, but it also doesn't read a breast cancer event. And so thinking about like really maybe even putting into your guidelines, where do you need to stick with the core colors or even the expanded colors, and where, like, what types of projects is it okay to maybe do whatever you want on, or do you figure out palettes in advance for, like, okay, you have an event, but here's your event color palette, things like that. But in general, I would say the less experienced your designer that you have, the more they're going to want to play and have fun and do what they think looks pretty. And they're not going to think about like that sort of organizational, they're not strategists. And so closing things up, and we're going to show you an example of that at the end too.
Yes. And then Anna just said fonts and colors are where we've run into lack of usage of the guide. We've only had four primary colors, two of which are black and gray, and two secondary, plus one serif font and one sans serif font, which marketing finds super limiting for compelling social posts.
Right. And that was going to be my exact thing, is that here's the thing. If you create a brand that is too narrow, people are going to go around you and they're going to go rogue. And so really having a usable brand is about what's that right balance, what's too far, what's too much. But if you have black and gray and then two colors, absolutely marketing is going to go around you, go rogue, and do what they want to do. It's called what is my it was my sister's theory of like, don't ask permission, ask forgiveness, that kind of a
Yeah.
situation. But it's out there and there's nothing you can do about it, and it gets to be too late. And so this that may be an opportunity for you guys to like work with marketing and come up with a secondary palette, and not just a set of secondary colors, but like sometimes people have a second set of secondary colors and it's like, here they are, do what you will with them. Sometimes people have a set of secondary colors that are very structured, like with the NEV that we're showing you here. Those five colors, they decided to let each color represent each of their different programs sort of loosely. But we have other clients that want, like, yellow is for this program and purple is for that program. So if you have any specifics around it, you want to document that. But honestly, really, it's a conversation around is how can you give them enough room so that there's some variety and flexibility, and that they feel like they have some space to work and do what they know is best within their skill set, but work within a skill set that works for everyone. Because if you just
Mhm.
start doing everything, it devolves into just like no brand really fast.
One of the things that I like to do is just like a little hack if you're the marketing person that's struggling with a very limiting brand,
Mm.
is that I like to use photography, which kind of leads us into the next thing, to add a little bit more color. If there's a limited color palette, maybe if I can use a photograph that has a little bit more color in it, that can kind of liven up the brand a little bit. And so now we're going to go into another organization that we've worked with that has very specific photography standards. And actually, it's interesting. At the moment, they're going through a rebrand. And so some of these photography standards that were established several years ago are starting to shift. But as part of their current brand, one of the big rules that they have is that if you're showing plants, and they are the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society, and so they are an organization that is all about the plants and horticulture. And a really big part of their brand is the intersection between how people and horticulture interact with one another. And so they have a lot of rules around showing people and showing diversity in their photography with the plants. They really, in the past, and they're kind of moving more toward this now, but they in the past really liked to avoid showing plants without any people in the image. So now they're starting to show a little bit more of that, but in the past they very much wanted people to be in the images. And the other thing about them is that they're an organization that is an inner city organization that very much works on beautifying the city of Philadelphia. And so, and making it more green and adding more trees to the city and working with locals. And so showcasing locals and showcasing diversity in their imagery is very important. And so those are some things that some organizations need to have, whereas other organizations photography can be a little bit more flexible. But if your organization has specific brand standards around photography, those should be in your guide. And whether that's something that you've established over time or something that you have currently as part of your brand, it's important to keep that in mind.
I also want to point out something that Maddie said here, which is a great idea for you all. If you have a limited color palette and you're not in a phase right now, there's no approval, like no one's going to say, okay, all of a sudden you can add something totally different. Lightening and darkening can work really well. Like we had a college we were working with that had basically black, white, and bright red as their colors. And like that was it. Those were their colors. And they were very well known for those colors, but we were creating in this case we were creating a micro brand for a giving day. So again, it was an event brand, but those were the only colors we had to work with. So we took the red and added some black to it and darkened it so that we could do like the bright red on the dark red or have copy on it that was readable because copy like you can't really put the red wasn't dark enough to put white copy on. It was really vibrating with your eyes. So darkening it gave us a few more ways that we could use color, and the darker red allowed for like some depth and expansion of the design without having to the external world read like it's a different color or a new color. It still felt like red, but it was just like a shadow of the red. And so that's sort of a trick that you can sometimes do without necessarily saying we're changing anything in our brand standards.
Yeah, yeah, we definitely like to use tints and shades of colors to stay
Yeah.
within a brand.
Hmm.
And Allison, you just asked a really good question that we get asked a lot relating to Canva, is that people definitely go rogue in Canva. And what Allison said is that her organization has 100 plus programs, and she doesn't even know what flyers, presentations, etc. people are producing on Canva and distributing. They have solid brand guidelines. How do I make sure staff aren't going rogue? So this is a situation where I highly, highly recommend. I'm not sure how your organization works and if people are working within um, a brand like if everybody is working underneath your organization's like me I'm trying to think like parent Canva account. But if they're all members of your organization's Canva account, what I recommend
Even if they
doing
don't,
is
it's kind of
using the brand guide. I think there's like a brand elements kind of section where you can restrict colors and you can restrict fonts that people are using so that you can at least kind of have some control over what people are doing. You can also, and I'm thinking with 100 plus programs, this is not something that you would be able to do, but there's also the ability to restrict their ability to actually like send anything out into the world without getting final approval from you. I don't think that you necessarily want to be dealing with that if there's that many organizations, but I highly recommend using those brand elements, putting in your brand colors and making sure that you're restricting your team to only using those brand colors. And that's a good way to kind of rein people in Canva because Canva is definitely the Wild West. And people like to have fun. So so those are some recommendations I have there. So I really quickly want to go into another organization that we've worked with, just to showcase something else that people use. And the next one we're going to show also has some of these. So some organizations have very specific iconography that they use and very specific rules around icons. And so if your organization is using specific icon style and certain icon imagery that needs to be used for certain reasons, it's important to document that in your brand guide. In this case, they were using them on their website, but they had very specific rules about how icons needed to look. They should be dark blue with a white fill, and they should always be on top of solid and light colors. And so just making sure that you're documenting that information is very important. We have some organizations that we've worked with that their iconography can only be used in on certain platforms or in certain or for certain programs. So if you have any rules around that, it's important to include that. And then we wanted to get into Stroud. So Stroud's an interesting organization because when we were working with them, they were doing a whole rebrand, but they weren't changing their logo at all. And I don't believe they changed any of their brand colors either. It was more around their look in other ways. And so, and how they spoke about their organization. And so that's something that you should also be thinking about, whether or not, and and PHS actually, who we were talking about a few moments ago, they have a visual style guide and then they have an editorial style guide. If your organization has so many standards that that's necessary, you may need two different style guides. But a lot of the time, an organization can have one style guide that includes this information along with the visual information. And so in Stroud's case, they had their all of their tone of voice information is included in their style guide. They have their key messages. They have writing tips. So this is an important one that if you have very specific writing tips, like we have one organization that we worked with that every time they said the word, I think it was hospice, it was either hospice or healthcare, it always had to be capitalized. And the word veteran always had to be capitalized in their organization. Certain words that they used always had to be capitalized. And if that is a standard of your organization, that needs to be documented so that if anybody is coming in and working on any new staff members come in, an easy way to share those rules with them is in your style guide. And so documenting that's important.
Right. And you
That's
don't have to keep it, it doesn't have to be in your style guide. Like some people have a separate editorial guide
Mhm.
and a visual style guide. Some people put it all together. Like there's no perfect way to do this. But in this case, because, and also a lot of this project was about changing the words side of the brand rather than the visual side of the brand, it all got kind of rolled up together.
Yes.
So.
Okay. Beth, did you want me to go through this guide any further or?
No, like
Okay.
I'm just trying to think. Is there any? Yeah, I think that's good. Like since I want to, we can go back to any of them and sort of show you comparisons about how they're all the same if you guys want to see that at all. But I want to make sure that we preserve time for this last one because it's a big one,
Okay.
and it kind of has a little bit of everything in it. And it's one that we just recently finished.
Yes. So this is one that we wanted to walk through step by step. And Beth, I'll be flipping through, but I'm going to let
You
you
want me
take the reins
to?
because you were very involved in this project.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Exactly. Okay, so
so
this is a
yeah,
little bit different. This is a governmental. I mean, it's a governmental brand, which I guess you could say that a government is a nonprofit. They don't have fundraising. But they have events. They have social media. They have programs. They have PR. They've in so many ways all the same thing. They've got to get people to like get excited about things. And so, so going in, let's just start beginning. Open it
yeah.
up. So same thing. It's long. This one has a lot more details, a little bit more of an introduction. They put in, so this is work that we did. So in this case, we did both brand strategy work and brand visual work. And so this is part of their brand positioning. Like you're a county, like it's easy to say like why does a county exist? Well, we know functionally, but this county wanted to be more than just that. They wanted to have a little bit more of a distinctive flavor. Especially because this is actually the county where Megan and I live that we did this project for. And the county right next door to us is Delaware County, which is often called Delco. Any of you that have seen Mayor of Easttown on television or Task, those two, or Silver Linings Playbook, all of those TV and movie shows are all based in Delco. And if you heard how what's her name, the actress, her accent, like it is a very
Kate Winslet.
yeah, Kate Winslet, like it's right next door to us, and they have a really distinct brand and vibe that is so different from this county that is right next door. So they wanted to kind of really map that out. So okay, keep going here. Okay, so then your standard basics. So this is a county that had previously only had a very official seal, and they wanted to look friendlier. They wanted to look more welcoming. So we created this sort of scenic logo for them. And as you can see, the shape that it's in is pretty distinctive. The challenge with the county that we live in is it's a really nice county. It has a little bit of like when we did interviews, the answer was, "Oh, you can get everywhere from here, and it has a little bit of everything," which on paper sounds like, well, that's sort of a generic brand, but But to be a place where you can, it's a great location. You can get to lots of different places easily and quickly. But from a looks perspective, we have trees, we have rivers, we have paths, we have a little bit of everything. It's sort of like, okay, what can we do to make it seem really distinctive? So, one of the things that we're doing is we use this sort of slightly unusual shape. It's not a circle, it's not a square, it's not a rectangle, it's not a rounded corner box. It's just a little off of all of that. And then we updated their seal. The seal used to be full color, ugly, like it was like burgundy and gray and like this pale yellow. It was the strangest combination of colors. So we cleaned it up. We actually ended up taking all color out of it, and we're only allowing it to be used in black or blue or white. Okay, so then here, this is complicated. Now we basically technically have created a situation where there are two logos, right? So we had to get cloud. We had to have a whole bunch of like work thinking about where do we use the one and where do we use the other. And then once you do that work and you think about it, then you have to document it so that people know, because this is going to be distributed. You were asking like, how do we get people to use this? Well, if you're creating a project and you don't know, do you go with the seal or do you go with the logo? We wanted to give people some guidance, because a lot of the purpose of a document like this is so that people aren't knocking on your door 24/7 asking questions. And that you can give them some guidance so that they can make some basic level of decisions themselves without having to come back all the time. And then the same thing, they wanted spacing. And the funny thing is you saw how we showed the spacing in the other one, with, arrows and inches and everything. They told us that's too complicated. Like, people can't understand that. Like, that's math, and it's going to be like a quarter of an inch or this much space. So what they said is can you come up with a simpler way of communicating people that aren't designers and aren't that don't really want to spend time thinking about this? And so we said, great. The width of the letter, this is a very wide font that we picked for the design. So we just decided that the width of the letter O, the capital letter O, is the amount of space. It's a little less than I would like it to be, but if it gives people a guideline that they can understand and can act on, isn't that better than like designer perfection? Like, we're all designers, we're all creators. We want what we want, but I would much rather see people doing their best to give it some space and to try to follow the rules than to say, I don't understand those rules, so I'm just going to ignore them.
Mhm.
And then, as we told you, files, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, Megan, this is you.
So this was so they wanted to create a variety of different logo colors and or logo styles. And so specifically the white version of the logo, they wanted to look very different than the black and the evergreen because they liked how this looked on top of darker colors. They just preferred it. They felt it stood out more. They felt it was easier to read. And so that needed to be documented. We also had to create a version of the logo, which sometimes we do have to create this for some organizations and sometimes we don't, but a version where the logo could be full color on top of a dark background. So we had to add a white outline around the full color logo with white text. And so those are some things that we just had to document to showcase how people should be using the logo. You shouldn't take the black logo and just change it to white and use that because that's a no-no.
Right. And in almost every other instance that we've ever created a logo, that works perfectly. Like you
Yep.
saw the NEV logo, it's lines. Turning that to white, perfect. So like if somebody was using this, you could see how they would think, oh, I have an EPS file, which is editable. That we gave them an EPS file. If somebody got their hands on that, you could see them just saying, we just want to flip that around to the opposite way. But then if you look at this as a scene, it would then basically create almost like a negative effect. And the sky, if we turned it reverse, the sky would have turned black. And they were like, that's not the message we want to send. So that's why we had to create a very specific file in this case. And so these are things you need to think about. Like,
Mhm.
you can't just tell people it's okay to make it white. You need to turn it to that, check it, make sure it really works for you. And Connie, I'm going to get back to you. I see you. Okay, so now not everybody goes this far, but like they wanted versions, like actual file versions of their logo with just the words. Like we call this a word mark, right? So this is another thing you have to think about when you're like sort of giving people options. Like, look at how many varieties. I don't think we're even done yet. So we've got the vertical, we've got the horizontal, we've got the black, we've got the white, we've got a navy blue, we've got all these different things. Keep going. And then, right, this is a county, a structured organization. So if any of you work in a hospital or a university, you're going to run into this kind of a thing. It's like the departments or the different colleges. So you have to, this is what we would call this is a master brand setup, meaning there's one logo, there's one way to use the type, almost one way. Did anybody catch the difference? I don't know if you might not have seen it. And then each office has its name underneath of it. But go back to, Megan, go back to the previous page. So look at these. This says Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. And then we went back and forth a million times, but because there's so much more copy here, if we kept it Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, and then see how some of these names of departments are two lines, we would have had like a stack next to the logo, which would have either had to make the logo huge or would make the copy have to get so much smaller. And we wanted to keep the size of Montgomery County the same font size in proportion to the logo. I know, are we nerding out too much for you guys here? Let us know. So we decided that we would make a conscious shift that on all department logos, um, we were going to use PA instead of Pennsylvania. But that's risky, right? The minute you give somebody something different, there's that risk of all of a sudden you're going to just start seeing Montgomery County, PA, because one of those interns is going to be like, I like that better. It's shorter and cleaner and looks better with my design. So you've got to document it, but you also have to monitor it, right? And really check it to say, is this happening? So if you look at this, they have a million departments. We did 7 of them, and with all these different files. So when you are bringing in somebody and saying, we need a logo redesign, this project, Megan delivered over 400 files, right? Unbelievable, right? Over 400 files. If you think about every single one of these different departments needed the white, the black, the color, all these things. So, and I'm not saying that to think about it like, oh my gosh, it's a bigger project than you think, but it is. But also think about how complex do you want your brand system to be. But it's not just about documenting it because it's not, I mean, it takes a tremendous amount of time to make these files, but once they're done, you have them. But then you've got all of these different files floating around that have to be monitored and managed and distributed. So it's just really just important to think about like how much expansion do you guys want to take on in your brand management system? Okay.
Mhm. The
Everybody says the
violations
same thing.
page.
Yeah. We call this the Don't Taunt the Logo page.
Yes, yeah, and we have the same thing for the seal as we needed. And then there's some brand exceptions. So I'm gonna let you talk about this, Beth.
Okay, so you guys know what it's like. There's always that one person that you don't have authority over, that you can't convince to do what you want them to do, right? We all have that person in our world, right? In this case, there were legit reasons. We're not going to tell the police or the sheriff in this case that they can't have their sheriff badge, right? There's no way that the communications people are going to like have authority over that. So there were a couple of different departments, like really official departments, the county court of clerks, or no, clerk of courts. But you can see the list there. So there are some sort of official offices that like it just isn't realistic or appropriate to take that away from them. And so and some of them are programs, like different little programs. So we wanted to list in this and document it that these are ones that have brand exceptions, because if you don't document it, you're going to have somebody saying, but why are you taking away mine when they can have theirs, right? And so you basically can say, if you've documented, these are the ones that have been approved, and that's kind of the end of the conversation, as opposed to having to constantly argue and re-argue and check behind somebody that's not doing the right thing. Another instance that comes up for a lot of you is you might do co-branding. Maybe you partner with another nonprofit, or you might have businesses that you do cause marketing relationships with, or lots of different reasons. You might have an event that has a like a lead sponsor, premier sponsor, and so you have to think about like, how does your logo look and work with other logos? Are you going to put them next to each other in a lockup? Are you going to separate them? And where are you allowed to have more than one logo on it? So they had a series of organizations that they do have deep partnerships with. So we wanted to like list sort of the rules and thinking around what happens with co-branding. And I'm sure this is going to get added to over time as they build other relationships.
Mhm.
Okay, color. Now I'm only showing you this page. There's another version. So, oh my gosh, color was such a thing. We're going to show you even more about it in a few minutes. But we basically worked down to create a primary color palette, a secondary color palette, and there's actually a tertiary color palette where that's like a third row of three colors. It's not in this guide because this is the guide that was distributed to the different departments. You know, all the different departments that they wanted to be working and executing designs in Canva. You're going to see at the end we created a ton of Canva templates for them. And they didn't, I don't, should I say didn't trust? They didn't think that that was a wise decision to give like the social worker that runs health and services like access to Orange, you know? It's so they basically came up with a a color palette for non communication staff and a separate color palette for communication staff. So that's another thing that you can consider doing, like restricting some of your color options to people that like have been trained or know how to use them, right? And so that's what we did here and really narrowed it down. Um, and then when we created these colors, though, you'll see it in a minute. We didn't create them in a vacuum. It's easy to create colors because you saw that our logo has a million colors in it. A lot of colors in the logo. And so one of the things that happened is that the logo looked best with sort of dulled down colors. Normally your color palette is like the two or three colors, the main two or three main colors from your logo. However, see that evergreen color there? Evergreen is the color that is the type in the logo and all of the line work around the logo. When we put that into like flyers and graphic design as a primary color, like you're saying about social, we put it into social media graphics, we tested it out and it dulled everything down. It made it look horrible online and on screen and in social that just it looked dreary. And
It
so
also made it look very national parks.
yeah, that's right.
That was a big issue, especially with the kind of organization that they are, because they're a county. A lot of their materials then started looking like it was coming from the National Parks Authority, and they didn't want that to happen.
yeah. So I guess what I'm saying here is as you're picking the color, like if you're in a process of changing your colors or creating a secondary palette, put it in a design or two. Explore how it would work in design before you completely finalize that color palette because you might be like, check, it's done, let's move on to graphic design. And you discover that it just doesn't translate and you end up having to go back and redo the work. Okay.
Especially if you have a highly illustrated logo. I think if you have a more simplistic logo, you're less likely to have that to run into that issue, but especially with a highly illustrated logo, you're going to run into this problem.
All right, we talked about fonts, so I'm not going to cover that on this one because I
But
got
they
bigger fish to
do
fry.
have, this is an example of one that has a Microsoft font alternative because this is an organization that needs a Microsoft font alternative. And we have a lot of organizations that need that.
Right. Okay. So as we were working with them, we didn't just create templates. We sort of built out this graphic style. Like they wanted a look. They wanted something that they could say, here are some shapes, here are some things. And so one of the things that we created was this rounded corner, rounded box for the photos and for colored area boxes. And the intention of it is to mimic or sort of reflect the rounded corners of the logo. It's as you can see, it's not exactly the same dimensions. And part of that is because we wanted to be able to pull this into Canva and let people who are non-designers work on it. In InDesign, we can completely customize that. We can drag points and make it perfect. You probably can do that in Canva too, but it takes time and thinking and
You
skill. And
can't.
you can't do it.
You
Oh, I was
can't.
gonna say, yeah,
That was something that we ran into an issue with is that you're very restricted on your shapes that you can work with in Canva, and you're very restricted in the elements that you can pull in. And so because of that, we had to work with shapes that were
that were
repeatable.
simple. Right. And so some of it is that. So we created that rounded corner box. And then we also, can you see at the top left corner where the logo is? it's a little darker. There's like a transparent gradient there that is actually blue. So that is something that we put into the style. We created it, we described it because we don't want people putting white type on top of areas that makes it too light to read. And if you're not a designer, you don't necessarily know that that's a problem and you might not know how to fix it. And so that's FYI, even if you're using InDesign, putting a transparent blend behind something that's white, great way to make type appear over top of a photograph.
Hmm.
It's allowed us to use a lot more photographs, and then we created out like a few different styles. We did them in flyers, we did them in social media graphics, and then we created this thing that we named the link line. Um, and Megan, can you go a little closer on that? Make the page a
Right.
little bit
All
bigger
right.
so that people can see. So see that
Oh,
link? Oh, too far. Yep. So see what we did?
all right. Hold
Oh,
on.
it's in there somewhere.
Sorry.
I know, I tried to make it be fancy. There we go. So we're calling, like, we basically created a branded dotted line for them. But like in other organizations, since okay, so this is a county. Let me tell you, I mean, I'm still an art director and a designer at heart. I tried so many fancy things that were cool and fun and colorful, and they were like, dial it back. We're a county. And so like we really couldn't do a whole lot. Like look at that swoosh, right? That's not the most original creative thing, but for a county, it's big deal. So we basically put the oval shape of the logo, turned it on its side, and decided to use that as the dot on the dotted line just to give them something that felt a little distinctive, a little nod to something unique that didn't feel generic or out of the box. You know, these days with so many people creating things in Canva and in AI, small touches that have some distinctiveness really do a lot to pull your brand together and make it look custom and not generic. Okay, so now here's the thing I really want to talk about. We only have a couple minutes left here. Accessibility, accessibility, accessibility. Like this is becoming a huge thing, and we are seeing it come up more and more and more in our organizations. And so, accessibility is not about color per se. Accessibility, when it comes to color, is about combinations of color. So, you
Hmm.
can have a blue that doesn't necessarily track as inaccessible, but when you put that blue onto a dark green, it becomes inaccessible. So, we had to do a ton of testing of a million different colors and how each color worked on top of other colors and what worked and what didn't, and what worked for text size and what worked for larger size. And for those of you that maybe this might seem extra nerdy, but if you're a university, I guarantee you this is an issue. Every university that we've worked with in the last 3 years has literally had a person who had a full-time job for accessibility, right? So it's becoming more and more of a thing. So if you for those of you that might want to change your colors but are struggling to make a case of it, do a little accessibility testing on your current colors. And if you've been trying to angle for a refresh but haven't gotten support, maybe you could say our colors aren't accessible, and based on our mission and our vision and our values, having a non-accessible color palette means that our website is going to be non-accessible, and that doesn't align with who we say we are. And so this is something to think about when you think about, oh, our brand is fine or our brand doesn't need to be updated. Is your brand delivering the promise, delivering the experience that you're saying that you have, that you're saying that you're trying to deliver in your mission and vision?
And yes, so Anne just asked a really good question. Can
Mm-hmm.
you define non-accessible? And so a good example of that would be if you're looking at, these color combinations are a little bit trickier to use as an example, but I'm gonna jump over to DocuBank really quick because we actually had an issue with them where we had to adjust their colors. So do you see this light blue color that they have here? A big part of their brand when we first established it several years ago was that they were going to have white text on top of this light blue color. It was a different light blue color before that was even lighter. And what they found, because especially because they have an older audience, this is an organization that works with an older audience. And so accessibility is very important to them. And so one of the things that they were finding as they were putting their colors through a color accessibility checker, and so you can literally just Google accessibility checker color. and it will
Yeah.
come up with one. They're free. You can just put in your colors. You can put in what your background color would be and what your text color would be, and it will tell you whether or not those colors are accessible. And so by non-accessible, before this color blue was a lot lighter, and so for some people, it's incredibly difficult to read. And so the reason why you're testing this is to see, okay, so do these colors work well together so that you can read the text on top of that color if you have some vision issues. And so that's what we mean by non-accessible.
And I just popped the one of the ones that I like in there. It's WebAIM, and it works really
Oh
well.
yeah, that one's
And
great. That one's
and
what a
so
lot of people use.
at its core, what makes something accessible and not acceptable is about contrast.
Yes.
Is the contrast difference, is this difference in contrast between the two colors, lightness and darkness. And so Denise was saying in their training, they said to use the color wheel to find the alternate colors for clarity. I would basically say that it depends. They could be opposite colors like orange and blue, but if they're the same color value, hue or intensity, they're not going to
Hmm.
have distance. So you basically want light on dark and dark on light. Like that's I think personally a better way to look at it than just, I mean, we actually just looked at a website that was that the brand colors were blue and orange, and I looked at that website and I'm like, there's no way that's passing accessibility.
Hmm.
And so there's just some things to think about. So I know we're right at time, but I also realize, you know me, I'm always going to give you like 1,000%. Um, does anybody have any other questions? I want to make sure that we have just take a minute here to answer anything. And if you have to go, please feel free to go. And also,
So
I would
as
say, go ahead.
oh, do you want to jump in and say anything, or I was going to just read Anna's question.
No, go ahead. Read Anna's question.
So Anna had said a little while ago, she's wondering if folks have any thoughts on or tips on how to provide instruction on a voice for different platforms. She's thinking tone of voice for general audience newsletter versus a donor newsletter versus a social media post talking about staff picks. This has been a hard one for us to figure out how to characterize and guide.
Okay, so that's a really good point. So we do that if you should ever happen to need help with it. But one of the ways that you can do that is you can actually work with an AI like a chat GPT or something to begin to do a little bit of that. So you can get a bunch of examples, like find some things that you have that you like good examples of your newsletter, good examples of LinkedIn posts that you like. Or if you don't have anything, just find even one example of like, this is a really good voice for this, and then you could put that in, give it as much as you can about yourself, send it your website, send it different things about you, and you can ask it like, how would you recommend I shift the tone of voice in this if I was doing this in LinkedIn? I mean, that's a basic way to go about it, but in a bigger context, it's sort of, the answer is always it depends. Like, who's your audience on LinkedIn? Are you going for professional? Like, what are your goals for your platform? Who's the audience you're specifically trying to reach on that platform? And then how do you adjust it for that? In the project where we showed you the core voice, it's only that because that's the most that we were hired to do, is like sort of, we typically start projects with core brand messaging, tone of voice, style, and key audience messaging. Like, what different do we need to say to these people? The next level below that is platform messaging. So if you don't have messaging, I would start there first. But if you have good, solid core messaging and you know what you should be saying to your audiences, you might have some examples and some data that you like that you could potentially experiment a little bit with, like your favorite AI, and see if that gets you a little closer to where you need. Or you can always call us or another firm that does strategy and get some help with something like that. Okay, we're here if you have questions. You can always call us. Megan, do you want to? So I also want to say, obviously, we love to talk about brand. You guys clearly love to talk about brand. Last year we did our first All About Brand conference, and it was great. I hope some of you were there. I hope you liked it. If you liked it, let us know. We're doing it again this year, and then this year we really want to make it accessible to more people. So we decided to make all the sessions free, and then if you want, you can upgrade to, we're going to have discussions, like even more discussiony than this, with just like a meeting format where we're all going to be able to talk together, kind of more like a roundtable discussion, so that we can really get into these more meaty discussions in conference this year, as opposed to just having 5 or 10 minutes of conversations. So It's free. Register. It's going to be September 10th. It's all day. We're starting it at I think 10 or 10:30 for those of you that are.
I
I
think
know
it's
we've
at
got.
10 a.m.
It's starting at 10 a.m. to try and give a little bit of a break to those of you that are on the West Coast. And then also some.
Oh, hold on,
Go ahead.
Beth, real quick. Sorry, just to jump in. If you would like to get involved in those discussions, those roundtable discussions, those are part of our Sessions Plus upgrades. So they are a fee, but until Sunday or until Monday, June 1st. So Sunday's the last day to get the discount. It's 149. It goes up to 249 on Monday. So if you'd like to secure that discount, I just wanted to let you know
Good point.
you want to sign up for that now.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We always want to know what else you want. It sounds like maybe we should redo our color. We Megan and I did
We've
a
been
color
talking
talk.
about that.
I was going to say, it seems like colors are a big deal, that we should maybe come back in and have a whole session just specifically on colors. And the other thing I want to say is, so this Montgomery County project, Megan Ault, who is the communication director for that, is going to be actually one of the speakers on the conference, and she's going to be talking about how do you go from rebranding, like ta-da, launch, we've rebranded. How do you go between that moment where everyone's super excited
Mhm.
and loves the new t-shirt to like actual adoption? So some of you were asking about how do we get people doing what we want them to do. My answer is always, do you have children? We all know how hard that is, right? But Megan's going to talk about what she's doing, how she's using this style guide as a tool, and the things that she's working to get her team on board, but also to get the people that are outside of her team being able to do things functionally independently to take the burden off of their small team. So hopefully we will see you at conference. We're super excited to do these, and we're kind of always exploring other things that we can think about and ways that we can help you. So email us anytime. Let us know what you're struggling with. Let us know what you'd like a session on. We're exploring ways to do more of this for you. Have a wonderful afternoon. And of course, I always go 306, 307. I should just say that mine are like 67-minute sessions. So thank you guys.
Thank you
It's great to
all.
see you all today, and hopefully we'll see you at conference.
Bye.